Her teeth rattled. Frost crept under her coat. Each breath burned. She tried to stand, but her legs shook. The lamp by the road flickered and cast long, cold shadows. No one passed by. No car slowed. The wind howled like a warning. Her small frame bent over, arms wrapped tight. She closed her eyes and waited, afraid she might never feel warmth again. Then she felt something soft go around her shoulders. A small hand held hers firm. She opened her eyes and saw a boy no older than 10, offering his only blanket without a word. Chinedu was 10 and lived on the streets of Lagos. He slept under bridges and begged for coins each day. He had one thin, worn blanket he wrapped around himself each night. People hardly noticed him as they passed by colorful market stalls. He wore tattered clothes and carried a small bag of empty cans. No home, no family. But he was kind. He shared the bits he found with other children on the street. He knew hunger and cold, yet he never lost hope. His bright eyes watched the world, and he dreamed of a better tomorrow, holding his blanket close against the night chill. One winter evening, Chinedu spotted a woman shivering by the roadside. She wore a thin dress and flip-flops. Her arms shook as she tried to stand. Her hair fell over her face in wet strands. Her skin was pale, and her lips had a faint blue tint. The wind sliced at her like sharp knives. She looked lost and weak. Chinedu watched from under a tattered bus shelter. He saw her knees buckle. She sank onto the cold ground. He knew in his heart she needed help. He clutched his blanket tighter and stepped forward, heart pounding with worry. Chinedu knelt beside the woman without a word. He took off his only blanket and draped it over her shoulders. It was thin and ragged, but he wanted her to feel safe. His own arms felt the chill creep in. He shivered, but he did not pull away. The woman looked at him with wide, grateful eyes. She tried to speak, but her teeth chattered too hard. He covered her hands with his, pressing them close to his chest. He smiled gently and whispered, "Stay warm." The blanket wrapped them both in a small slice of shelter from the cold night. The woman's lips trembled as she tried to smile. She managed a soft, "Thank you." Her voice was barely a whisper. Chinedu only nodded and looked away so she would not see tears in his eyes. The wind blew harder, rattling dry leaves on the road. The woman closed her eyes and leaned into the warmth. Chinedu stared at the dark sky, counting seconds until the cold became too much. Yet he stayed, holding his breath and stiffening his resolve so she could rest in peace a little longer. That night, heavy rain began to fall. Chinedu wrapped his arms around himself under a thin bus shelter. Drops splashed on the pavement and ran down his coat. His blanket lay with the woman, keeping her safe. He dreamed of warmth and soft beds he had never known. The rain pounded like drums on metal. Chinedu shivered until he could shiver no more, then drifted into uneasy sleep. His dreams were of soft pillows and friendly smiles. He woke with wet hair and stiff joints, but he felt peace knowing the woman had his blanket to keep her from the storm. By morning, the rain had stopped. The sky was pale with dawn light. Chinedu ran back to where the woman had been. The bus shelter was empty. No sign of her blanket or footprints in the mud. He called out softly, "Ma?" Only the wind answered. He searched the nearby street but found nothing. His heart sank. Maybe she had found help and left. He pressed his hand to the wet ground where he'd knelt. Then he walked away, hoping she was safe, holding the thought that someone had warmth because of him. Years went by, and Chinedu grew taller and stronger. He left the street at 16. A kind neighbor named Mama Funka helped him find steady work at a small garage. He learned to fix cars and change tires. He saved every naira he earned. He rented a tiny room with a thin mat and a small lamp. Still, he never forgot the woman in the rain or his lost blanket. He kept a scrap of paper in his coat pocket, a rough drawing of a woman wrapped in cloth. He hoped one day to find her again and make sure she was well. At 25, Chinedu worked full-time at the busy garage. He fixed flat tires, changed oil, and replaced brakes. He earned enough to live in a small room with a proper bed. He bought a soft blanket and a warm coat. He felt proud of how far he'd come. Still, he often thought of the woman's grateful eyes. Each time he drove home under the moon, he glanced at every shadow. He kept hope alive that their paths might cross again. One afternoon, the garage phone rang. A lady's voice said she had car trouble and needed help right away. She sounded calm but tired. Chinedu agreed to meet her at the main road. He grabbed his toolkit and drove his old van there. He parked beside her sleek car. The woman stepped out and wrapped her coat tighter. His chest clenched as he studied her face. Something about her eyes felt so familiar. He focused on the engine, but his mind raced through one question. Could it be her? Early next morning, the woman drove back to the garage. She stepped out of her shiny car with confidence now. Her coat was thick, her boots sturdy. She walked toward Chinedu as he cleaned his hands. His heart raced. She paused a few feet away and looked at him. The street light caught her face, and he saw soft lines around her eyes. She met his gaze with a mix of surprise and relief. He felt his breath catch. He set down his rag and lifted his eyes to meet hers, wondering if fate had truly brought her back. Chinedu stared at her face. It had changed with time, but her eyes were the same deep brown pools. He remembered that night in the rain. She wore a thin cloth then, now she wore warmth and strength. His heart pounded. He swallowed hard and spoke her name aloud. Amara? Her eyes widened. She reached into her bag and pulled out the torn paper, the drawing he had kept. She pressed it in his hand, tears in her eyes. He held it close and saw the woman in rain smile back at him from the past. Amara's voice was soft but clear. Chinedu, you saved me that night, she said. His breath caught in his chest. She told him how she had been lost, with no coat and no ride, and how the boy with a thin blanket had carried her back from the edge. I never forgot you, she whispered. She had moved on, built a life, and started a shelter for people on the street. All those years she kept his drawing in her bag, hoping to meet him again. Chinedu knelt beside Amara's broken car. He replaced a spark plug, tightened wires, and checked the oil. The engine coughed, then purred like a sleeping cat. He wiped sweat from his brow. Amara watched silently, a soft smile on her face. When the car started, she clapped lightly. Chinedu stood and brushed off his hands. He felt proud and nervous all at once. He handed her the keys. Amara looked at him with gratitude and surprise. Thank you, Chinedu, she said. His heart warmed. It felt like that cold night had led him here. Amara spoke of her work. She ran a shelter for people who lived on the streets. She offered food, blankets, and a safe place to sleep. She asked if Chinedu would join her team. "You have skills that can help many," she said. "Teach them how to fix bikes and small engines. Give them hope." Chinedu felt proud and shy. He touched his toolkit and thought of his blanket and how sharing it had changed his life. He looked into Amara's kind eyes and nodded. "Yes," he said softly, "I will help." Chinedu thought of his old life under bridges. He felt timid at first. Could he really teach these people? He saw the faces of other street children, so full of fear and longing. He knew how much a small gift could mean. He looked at Amara and felt her trust give him courage. He took a deep breath and said, "I will come tomorrow." She smiled and placed a warm hand on his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. He walked home that night, excited and nervous, but ready to share his skills and change more lives. At the shelter, Chinedu set up a simple workshop. He laid tools on a worn table and showed the kids how to clean spark plugs, patch tires, and tune small engines. They watched his hands and followed his steps. As they learned, they began to believe in their own strength. They smiled when they fixed a wheel or a chain. Chinedu felt a warm glow inside. Each success was a step away from the cold nights of his past. He saw hope grow in their eyes. He realized that fixing machines could also heal broken spirits. Amara watched Chinedu teach and heal. She saw how his kindness and clear voice made the kids listen. She often joined in, bringing hot meals and words of praise. Chinedu and Amara stood side by side, two lives linked by a single night of mercy. The children cheered when they finished a project. The shelter buzzed with laughter and warmth. They all knew they were part of a circle of giving that began with a simple blanket on a freezing night long ago. Years later, Chinedu stood by a glowing fire in the shelter's courtyard. Children laughed and played under sturdy roofs. He wore a thick coat and held a fresh blanket, the first gift from Amara. She joined him, handing him the blanket with a warm smile. He draped it over his shoulders and looked at the faces around him. He thought of that cold night and the stranger he helped. Now he had helped many. What would you do if someone once saved your life? How would you pay it forward? If this story moved you, please subscribe and comment below.